good design enables, bad design disables. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. I think if you only take away from today, can I get there, can I play, can I stay, then I think that is something that you can check everything, every design that you have. Can people get to it? Can they use it really well? And will it be comfortable enough to sustain their interest that they can keep on using it for as long as they want to?
As you probably know, this podcast is an initiative of the Institute of Interior Impacts. And that's why Sven van Buren and me, Mark Miskus, co-founded this global institute to create impact, to design this world together with you, because we do have the power to design and create this world. But listen, who has the power has the responsibility. Sometimes it's hard to remember that because most of us are crazy about beauty, the aesthetics, and other designers might be member of camp functionality. Form follows function. Well, we believe in form follows meaning. Meaning to grow as a person, as a family, as a company, as a community, to grow as humanity. Therefore, we've invited our special guest of today. So let me introduce her. She's chair of Centre of Universal Design Australia, a registered charity seeking a more inclusive world. She wants to see a world where designers and policymakers automatically consider the diversity of the population and create inclusive built environments, inclusive designed architecture, inclusive interior design, but also products, services, and communications. She writes regularly on universal design and inclusive practice and contributes to various advisory panels. Her academic qualifications include a Bachelor of Social Science, MBA, and PhD. So I'm honored and excited to share her important message, passion, wisdom, and love with our global design community. Please welcome Dr. Jane Bringolf.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you are in the world at the moment. I'm speaking to you actually from Gadigal land in Sydney. Gadigal land is the land of First Nations people here in Australia. So yes, and thank you very much for also asking me to talk about my favourite topic.
Yeah, of course.
Where people will tell you that it's difficult to shut me up. So Mark, I'm relying on you to be guiding me and cutting me off if I'm going on too long.
Yes, yeah, I know we can do a 3-day event maybe on this topic when we spoke the first time. So I will guide you, but it's all interesting. So wonderful. Yeah, it's a special topic actually. And when I was graduating, I did a project about inclusive design, about how to discover how public space is designed for people that don't have full ability to assess public space. So I was driving, well, at least a full week, but I actually had a mobility scooter for more than 3 months, and I was driving it a lot of days. I went shopping. I went out to bars and restaurants just for well, I should call it a walk, but it was more a ride, obviously. So I felt how it was to be excluded from society, and it took me a lot of time in my head. That was the most difficult part in my mindset, to accept that it's wonderful to have access to all this space, but that you are, well, relying on something else, and your environment, your world is not designed for you, and that doesn't feel complete, or it doesn't feel right. So it's yeah, I'm very glad that I met you, that somebody introduced you, Deborah de Jong introduced you. So it reminds me of a very important topic that I, well, forgot a little bit about in my existing design career. Yeah. So let's start. Explain me what is inclusive design?
Yep. Okay. So I'm using the term universal design, but inclusive design means the same thing. So the term universal design is actually in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, and that has made it a more global term. But particularly in the UK, they call it inclusive design. And there are people who will try to tell you that there's some nuanced difference between inclusive design and universal design. And they'll say things like, well, universal design is one size fits all and inclusive design isn't. Well, that's not true either. I don't know where the one size fits all came from, but certainly in academic terms, people like to guard their territory. And so I think that that's what is happening. If you can't carve out that space for yourself, then you're kind of out of a job. So human-centered design, user-centered design, all of those words are really about including everybody. It's about how do we think about the way that we design. I should say to everyone, I am not actually a designer. We didn't get that bit in, but I certainly write emails. I do other things that end up being de facto designed, even though I'm not a professional designer. So the aim is to look at things so that we can include as many people as possible. And your example there, Mark, is that often the people who come on board with these ideas are the people who have some personal experience. And that is the reminder. So it's either them or they watch a family member struggle. And I think we're moving on from this idea of some acceptance in the, last century it was like, oh, well, isn't it a pity that you have a disability? Or things like, well, what do you expect as you get old? To saying, hang on a minute, just because I have a disability or because I'm old now doesn't mean that I can't be, part of what's going on in the bigger world. And even just in my neighbourhood. So, Mark, I'm not sure I actually answered your question there because I was rambling a bit.
No, you're okay. It's all about the terms, about inclusive design. Yeah, universal design. Sometimes in Europe we call it design for all.
Yeah, it's the other one, design for all. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds kind of friendly, because when you're not designing for all, you can you can ask yourself, is it a good design? Are you excluding people?
Yeah.
So, we have the topic is the topic we were using is designing for the extremes.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Okay. Well, that idea came to me when I was running a workshop for some landscape architects, actually, and trying to get them to think about that paradigm shift in design and in terms of being inclusive. And I talked about the population bell curve. And what I said was, there's no such thing as the average. Average is mythical. Average is like one person. And you need to design for the whole population bell curve. And that's when one of them said to me, so if you design for the extremes, you include the middle. And it was like a real aha moment. And that's certainly one way of looking at it. And although it's simplistic, it's a very good start. I then have to sort of start thinking about, well, who's actually in the middle as well?
Yeah.
Because you can talk about the extremes like children at one end and maybe older people with disability at the other end of that bell curve. But in the middle, there's a huge diversity of population, huge. And within that central area of the bell curve, you've got people who are neurodiverse. You've got people who are blind, who are deaf, who've got arthritis, who've got back pain, who have mental health conditions. You know, the list goes on, that they come from a different culture, that they maybe not have language, they may not be able to read, all sorts of things that that is the collection of humanity.
Yeah, it's not about this wheelchair sign, is it? Eh? A lot of us think the wheelchair sign is that's what we try to do with accessibility, but it's actually, well, I read it in your paper about a universal design. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. The sign, the wheel, as we know, is the person in the wheelchair, the blue sign with the white wheelchair. It was not a wheelchair in the very first beginning, was it?
No, and that, I mean, that was actually designed at around about the 1930s, I think, by somebody. And originally, it just had a stick person without a circle on the top to indicate a head. And then somebody went and stuck a circle on it, so it actually looked like a wheelchair user. And look, I can understand that, because this is a concept that's evolved over time. Yeah. And the thing, I guess, in the 70s, not only did we have, or the 60s, we had the civil rights movement. In the 70s, we had the feminist movement, and you know, the whole business of the rights movement. And then we ended up with a group, and we still have them, who I would say is a disability pride group. You know, they're members of a very discrete community, and they wear their badge as a person with disability, or as they say in England and Scotland, a disabled person. Language is everything. Yeah. Is that they are loud and proud about their disability, and they are out there seeking their rights. And that is another aspect of this, is rights are never given by the privileged to those who don't have them, unless you really, really fight them for it. Because the UN Convention's been around for many years. We've had the International Year of People with Disability back in 1986 or something. We've had disability discrimination legislation in many developed countries, even developing countries. And look at me, I'm still talking about it. Yeah. You know, many, many years later. And so the fight is still on. And it's those norms, societal norms that we're all brought up in, of, you know, oh, isn't it unfortunate you had an accident? Tough. Leaving it to sort of say, well, that's your life now. To others are saying, no, I want more than this now, you know. And I think in the 21st century, this is where universal design has evolved from being not about wheelchairs, not about just the built environment, but if we're truly talking about inclusion, what we mean is finding ways to include as many people as possible. And, you know, every time I think we've captured everyone, we end up with another marginalised group that I didn't think of before. So more recent joiners are people who are gender diverse, refugees, migrants, you know, people from different cultural backgrounds. They're all relatively new into this mix of diversity, equity and inclusion.
Yeah. So what you're actually telling us is, correct me if I'm wrong, if you design for the averages, your design is actually for no one. Yeah?
Yeah. And someone made a really good video on that about aircraft pilots, where they tried to design the uniforms, the flying uniforms and so on. And they did it with the average, and then they found that because the cockpits, I think this goes back to the older flying days, the cockpits are very limited, and because people are different size, if nothing else, is that they couldn't get a one size fits all.
No.
So that didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, well, for us, it's as designers, or just people in general, we like stereotyping, right? It makes life easier to do that. it's part of culture, of social perception, but we can stereotype on race, on religion, level of wealth, sexual orientation, intellectual, and the physical ability, but we are not all the same. So how do we deal with that? What can be a good design then? How do we start with that?
Well, I think first of all is to be. I mean, we can't know our unconscious bias, but I think if we can at least know we have some unconscious bias, I mean, we will have biases that we know. I mean, we're biased towards people that we love, for example, is that we have to consider that. But I think in some ways, it's more about reading about that, about ableism, about sexism, racism. And these all come into the mix, and the stereotyping. I mean, stereotyping, whether it's positive or negative, is still stereotyping, and it doesn't help. So, for example, here in Australia, where we're trying to get people to work later in life, is to make sure that people can be employed after the age of, well, actually 55, 60, 65, if they want to be employed, is saying things like, oh, older people are more reliable, or they're more wise, or they're more this or that in a positive way. We have to think about, well, what does that say about younger people?
Yeah.
Are they all stupid? You know, I mean, that is asking yourself to sit on the other side and question yourself. You know, what am I really saying here? And all that does is still marginalise older people as being a separate and special group. And I think that's the whole thing. Is if we think of and I'm going to use the word elderly. We don't use the word elderly, it's older people. Elderly, because of the stereotype about an older person with a walking cane, or, you know, being incompetent and can't use a mobile phone, all those stereotypes, you know, we have to think about those as try and catch ourselves out when we say these things, you know. And the other one is what a late disability advocate here used to gave a wonderful TED talk. Her name is Stella Young.
Stella Young?
Stella Young, yes. And she talks about inspiration porn, about the fact that because she is a working woman, because I mean she's uses a power wheelchair, she's a woman of very short stature as well, and she, you know, oh, you're, you know, so inspirational. She says, what, for getting up and having breakfast? You know, I mean, there's nothing, I just have a life like you have a life. And she calls, you know, so people with disability who can do things are not exceptional. Then we shouldn't be drawing our inspiration from them. We should be supporting everyone with disability to achieve their full potential.
They got it's normally they got a whole other lesson from life, because that's the other side always. I'm jealous. It's not that you want this disability or a disease or whatever, but there is a mind shift going on always with these people. They appreciate other stuff, some really normal stuff that you do just every day. You're not especially grateful for that. It's normal. But if you see another person who can't do the normal stuff, you're like, oh wow, now we know why this person is so grateful or so positive or so blessed almost with this vision and perspective on the world. So yeah, it's just to be clear, it's universal design is not a design stream. You can't recognize it. That's the good thing, is it? It's not like you see door handles or special wall handles, or of course there are some tools or gadgets to make life easier, but it's not that you can recognize it in one split second, is it?
No, in fact, I think the best universal design is invisible. You only notice it when it's not there. And I think that's the key. Is and that we need to be careful here, is that there are people who need specialised design. There are people who will need a grab bar in their bathroom.
Yeah.
But if we were to put a grab bar in every shower, in the same way as we put a soap dish, that wouldn't be special either. And then we would all have something to grab onto if we were slipping, and not then think about, oh, I've fallen over in the shower, now I need a grab bar. You know, like you always need it the day after you didn't have it. So, you know,
Yeah.
there are those sorts of things that people with very specific impairments might need a compensation. And so that's the accessibility side of things like that, is the compensation for the actual impairment, where the other designs in the bigger, wider world are about including people in social and economic life. So that's really the way that I like to explain that.
Yeah. So hey, you told me already, but I want to, I need you to share this, because what is your biggest frustration about the design world? What's the problem? What is going on?
Look, generally speaking, designers, when you kind of open their eyes to another way of thinking, you know, I mean, they're generally creative people, and that they are actually, most of them are welcoming the ideas, but there are also those who will say, you are trying to restrict my creativity. And I think the challenge of universal design is to see whether you really are creative or not.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's like it has to do with this one size fits all perception. That you think, I need to design something that's for everybody. No, you design for the extremes. It sounds even more excited, right? Designing for the extremes is more exciting than designing for everyone. So that's the first thing. But then the first reaction is, hey, yeah, where is my creative freedom?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I guess the thing, certainly in the built environment, and I think even in the digital world, when we're talking about software development and so on, is especially where there are standards already in place, is or disability access standards of some sort, is the idea that you can tick the box on those things and the job's done. And there's, you know, and then kind of blanking out that there could be improvements to doing it better. And it's usually because, and I'm talking about buildings, and this would apply to the interiors of buildings as well, is that if a universal design approach had been taken in the first place, before you actually started doing any drawings, then the creativity could be in a way inclusive enough so that the design of, you know, so that there are no extra added on bits like ramps to make the place feel welcoming and where people can belong. And I think that really now, as I say, in the 21st century is the aim of design. We want people to enjoy the space. We want everyone to feel like they're welcome, that they can stay for as long as they like, it's comfortable, they don't feel out of place. You know, all of that works really well for as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So one of my frustrations is designers who will keep on putting in revolving doors. Revolving doors are a nightmare, not just for a wheelchair user or a pram pusher, but they're also a nightmare for people with depth perception difficulties, being able to judge the speed of the door, people who are unsteady on their feet, some people who have mental health conditions that can feel trapped or claustrophobic in them. You know,
Yeah.
the list goes on, and I think people assume that, and the stupid thing about all of that is our access requirements, our laws say that if you've got a revolving door, you have to have a separate door for people who can't use a revolving door. Why didn't you just make them all sliding doors in the first place? You know?
Yeah, you don't feel special anymore. You feel included. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's even with me when the revolving door is getting too slow. I take the other door, and then I'm always like, oh, I'm not allowed to take that door because it's for people with disability or something. Yeah? It's the same with the toilet. The toilet is much bigger for those people, and of course it's bigger. You need more space. But it's always like it's not for me. Even when there is a row and there are no special people with abilities, disabilities, they never, nobody's using the toilet. But you could make all big size toilets or luxury toilets. It doesn't have to look like that. Another thing about feeling excluded, because I want to hear your later. I want to hear what could be the effects of feeling excluded. But I had another experience. We had I guess it was in Amsterdam. We had a restaurant. It was run by blind people. And you could book a dinner over there. And from the very first moment when you open the front door, it was pitch black. And there was somebody there to grab your hand and to guide you to your table. And you didn't know how big it was inside, how beautiful. Well, definitely it was all black. So I couldn't see anything. I was relying on on voices, on sounds. I really wanted to touch all the walls to get to know where I was. It doesn't feel safe at all. And then you have to have dinner. And that was a problem because there was a water bottle on the table. You could fill your own glass, but you needed a trick to do that with your finger in the glass to feel the water level. And then after that, I was with my wife, and I said, I think they put us in the corner with the back to the bigger space. And I hate those. I always want to have the best view in a restaurant. Sometimes I switch 3 times in a restaurant to have the best view. So I was with my back to the whole restaurant, and I could feel it. And then I was touching the wall in front of me, and there was a wall. We were in the corner placed with 2 walls in front of us, and that was I was getting a little bit claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. For once, it was a good experiment, a nice experience, but I never want to go back there because it doesn't feel right to me. So what could be the effect if you experience this, well, let's say every day, if you feel excluded every day?
I don't have that personal experience, so it's really difficult for me to I don't presume, and everybody's experience will be different. I think there are some people out there, particularly disability advocates, who will challenge, like just say, I'm going to keep on doing these things that I want to do, even though I don't feel welcome, and even though it's difficult. And then there will be other people who will just stay home. And that's the bottom line. They just don't make the journey. They don't make the visit. They just don't do it. And I think, tracking back on your experience there, for most people who are considered legally blind, that is not having enough sight to be really useful, is many of them can still see dark and light, and some people have a vision impairment where they can see only a pinpoint of vision in front of them, and there are others who have only got peripheral vision. And the thing is, even so, if they see like a pink blur, they'll know that that's a face, for example, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about the exclusion there. So
in general, Jane, because there are a lot of dimensions. We in design, you could say, functionality could be one thing, that the design is not functional, so you can feel excluded. But there's a social aspect in it. But I think the emotional aspect, if we talk about meaning or form follows meaning, the emotion is very important to us. So what can it do with people emotionally when you feel excluded?
Well, look, I think obviously it has an impact on mental health. and that would be, you know, the first thing to be thinking about. I think it comes down to the way that other people treat them. So I was using that experience of the restaurant and the blind person is how many restaurant menus are in Braille, but then how many restaurant menus are readable for people who, you know, sometimes a tiny faint font because they want the menu to look fancy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so we're not even talking about people who are blind there, but you know, so you see people like me getting out their mobile phone and turning on the flashlight so they can read the menu.
Yeah.
That that sort of thing. Um, the the sense of not being part of society, of feeling, look, any if anybody has experienced discrimination of any kind, and I'm just going to, you know, be blunt here and say I think that most women have felt discriminated against at some time in their life. Um, there are men who perhaps have not, and maybe women who have not, but sometimes you're discriminated against and you're so used to it you don't even feel it anymore. So there's that side to it. Um, but the idea of being discriminated against if you experience it for the first time is the indignity of it. You know, it's not fair. You know, where is the social justice in all of this? How comes you are leaving me out? And, you know, so that you can get actually quite angry about that, but you can't live every day with that level of anger. And so what a
Mhm.
lot of people do is they turn that into as much action as they can, either for advocating for themselves or advocating for themselves and for others by joining groups. But you know that we're talking a lot about disability here, but there are lots of other groups. You know, people who are gender diverse, they've really
Yep.
come onto the scene now. They're having to do the same fights that people with disability have done in the past. The people who are really quiet are older people. But I think with the baby boomer generation that we have here in Australia anyway, I'm assuming elsewhere, is that, hang on a minute, just because I'm old doesn't mean you can put me on the shelf and tuck me away somewhere and forget about me, you know. So, so
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
it affects not only you as a human being, as a person, but it affects your family and friends too.
yeah.
If your environment is not designed in a good way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
tourism's a really good example of that. You know, where can you go on holiday if you have, say, a child with autism? You know, how many places can you go where they're going to be, you know, aware or forgiving of any, you know, temporary bad behaviours? And when I say bad behaviours, I mean behaviours that are difficult to manage. You know, it might
Yeah.
be shouting or having a tantrum or something like that.
Well,
And it's only when you,
surprising moves. Eh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, and it's only when you understand that the child or the adult is actually feeling very insecure, and the way that they deal with their feeling of insecurity is to fight, is to shout, is to, or to totally withdraw and not speak. So, you know, I can say the people on the autism spectrum, they're another group that have really been pushing for thinking about what they need in terms of design. Now, this is where design for people on the autism spectrum is becoming a really big thing now, not just in terms of sensory rooms where you can go and be quiet, or there's rooms where there's, you know, lots of colour and quiet stimulation, somewhere where you can relax, is how does that environment I'm thinking now about wayfinding and legibility of the internal environment, like in a hospital or somewhere,
Hmm.
um, is how can we make that intuitively legible so that you don't have to keep asking people the way or looking for signs. Um, you know, I'm just thinking about my local hospital had a huge extension to it, and it's a long extension, and it's just like 1 kilometre of corridor where every part of it is the same pattern repeated all the way down. So all the doors look the same, all the rooms look the same,
Yeah.
and it just becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, the
Totally overwhelming.
orientation is gone. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
especially on the streets, what I noticed. And in well, let's call it in history or in the early days, you had a lot of landmarks in public space, like station clock, or you had fountains or urban elements.
yeah,
And
yeah,
those small kiosks or some, all those stuff is getting rid of in the space, but they were really helpful to
yeah.
recognize your environment. And it's the same in interior space, like you said, corridors, floors, the color of floors, color of doors, floor planning, all about recognition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, in some of these places, seating becomes really important as well. And, funky seating looks great. Funky looking chairs, nice bright colours and all that. I don't have a problem with colour. I think colour is really important in terms of making people feel welcome. But please make chairs so that you can get in and out of them easily. I've seen libraries have been redone with all these chairs that you can sit in and read. And I think, well, maybe I can get into that seat, but I'm not sure I can get out again, because I've
Yeah,
sunk so low.
yeah,
So, a selection of seating so that
yeah.
not
You
necessarily,
can mix and match wonderfully.
yeah,
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 and sometimes the design looks really fancy or funky, and you will be surprised how comfortable it is. Yeah.
yeah,
So there are different ways. You don't reckon. Yeah, well, the really, let's call it the universal design chair, but the disability chair, you can recognize that one in a split second. These are the chairs in the showers, or on
yeah,
special toilets. These are so ugly designed. There has to be another way for that. But
yeah,
sometimes you will be surprised how comfortable the seat is for let me call it for my grandma or something. She's sitting in it.
yeah,
Oh, that's a really nice chair, and I'm looking. Wow, it's really fancy too as well. So then I think every time when I recognize those things, I'm like, okay, see, it's possible. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be ugly or looking
yeah,
like a tool. I
yeah,
want to, but before I forget, because it's really important. You gave me an example of we were talking about the holiday, and it reminds me of a story about a museum when you go there.
yeah.
You know that story where when you're
Oh,
entering a museum with the bus.
oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, you remind that
We had
story. Yeah,
yeah. So this
please
is the
share. Please
extension to our
share.
art gallery.
Yeah,
Extension to our art gallery, and the architects had, really invited a group of people from the disability community to look at what they designed for the extension to the art gallery, and they did, as architects do, these wonderful fly-through videos, and told us all about it and what it would and wouldn't have and so on. And then they said, for questions, and the person sitting next to me straight away said, "And where are the toilets?" And the architect said, because we can't see any toilets on the entry level. And the architect said, "Oh, we didn't want there to be too much of we wanted people to move through the lobby fairly quickly. So the toilets are down one level. You take the lift down one level, right?" So the person next to me said, "The people who visit the art gallery are mostly older people and children. They come in buses. They
yeah,
may have been on the bus for 2 to 3 hours. Guess what they're going to want straight away is a toilet. They don't want to be hopping from foot to foot waiting for the lift." And the problem with that was that the design was so advanced, it was just ready for development application, that there was no opportunity to change it. And the moral of that story is get users involved at the beginning. Don't wait for them to tick it off like, "Oh, look at me, I've had an access consultant. Our access consultant has told us it's all okay." That's my frustration, is designers who only want to stick to the minimum standards. Do I really have to do this? Oh, all right, then I will do it. Instead of with some idea. Of course, disability design is going to affect your design if you don't think about it at the beginning. If you have to tack it on at the end, it
Yeah.
will destroy your design.
Yeah. So it's an easy way to prevent design mistakes. Just test it, co-creation, get people involved to test it. Yeah, we hear it many times from other major players in the interior design field and architecture. They always have test panels. It can be in all kinds of shapes. I hear the story about Patrick Casey with he was designing nightclubs and he was always testing it with women, that they feel safe in a nightclub because it's a dangerous place for them with man on the manning on the hunt. So they need to feel. He was designing with round shapes and all kinds of light systems and no dark corners, and he had a whole theory about it. It's so great. I think he will go in one of the next podcasts for sure. Multi-sensory design is a good one. This is coming up in one of the next podcasts, all about, well, all this designing for all senses, so that you can use, of course, for a full design experience, but also for, as you said, for people with autism or other disabilities or challenges, how we can call them. Yeah. So co-creation is one to prevent mistakes. Get consultants for people to test your for sure public spaces. If you design for residential and you have a private family, or you have you can just design for them. Otherwise, well, if you want really a sustainable space, you need to design for the next habitant too. So actually, we could say if you don't design inclusive, it's not a good design, right?
Well, the simple statement that I saw once was good design enables, bad design disables. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. Yeah. So the other thing that I just probably wanted to say, because I see that we're getting close to time now, is just for people who are fairly new to all of this idea, I generally use the 8 goals of universal design as a framework to be thinking about it. And some work I did again with landscape architects was that they took those 8 goals and they remade them to suit their discipline. They remade them. And what actually happened in the process of talking about all of this is eventually it became something really simple that I think that could be applied anywhere, because, I can't remember 8 things in a list. Like most people, I can only remember 3 things at a time. And interestingly, this is what came out of it. Because it was about play spaces, this is how it came out. Can I get there? Is there parking? Is there a pedestrian crossing? Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Can I play? Which we can interpret as, can I do whatever it is that I want to do when I get to the place that I've got to?
Yeah. Can you use everything? Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So can I get there? Can I play? And then can I stay? And in that context, it was, is there seating? Is there water? Is there shade? Is there a toilet? That kind of thing. But the bottom line of that is, can I stay for as long as I want to, feel comfortable, welcomed and belong? And that, I think, if you only take away from today, can I get there? Can I play? Can I stay? Then I think that is something that you can check everything, every design that you have. Can people get to it? Can they use it really well? And will it be comfortable enough to sustain their interest that they can keep on using it for as long as they want to?
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think that those are just 3 simple questions to test your design in the first place. And if you have any doubts, you can consult anyone else, or you can test your audience. Yeah. Talking about your 8 goals, we will create a landing page instituteofinteriorimpact.com/Jane, and we will add the 8 goals over there. You already, as the universal design, you have 7 principles. So that's really cool. We teach our students always to have your own design principles, so people will recognize how you do it, what you do, what the impact is you want to make, the goal you want to achieve with each other. And it's so easy when you are in line. So you're doing great with this, with the 7 principles are great. So we are going to share them there too. You have a nice kind of mini course on universal design on the website. We will add a link to the document, because if people want to know more, there's a video about the pilots as well. It's all about products, communication, interior design, architecture, all this stuff. So yeah, well, thanks a lot, Jane. Wonderful to fresh up the memory and all the stuff I discovered, well, almost 20 years ago when I was graduating, well, maybe 25 already. So yeah, wonderful. It was not on top of my mind, and it's not on my mind every day. And if you are designing public spaces or architecture spaces, I think it has to be on top of your mind. If you do residential, retail, or shops, it can be on top of your mind. You need to be aware of that. Yeah, you need to ask yourself. That's what I remembered. Ask yourself, am I designing something where everybody feel welcome and belong? Really everybody. And then you include everybody. So design for the extremes.
Yeah.
Great, Jane. Thanks a lot. I see some thumbs up. I saw them during the webinar and podcast. I see some hearts right now. So it's a really inspiring story. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I just wondered, you mentioned there might be questions. I don't, so did you were you open to that or not?
Yes, if we have people in the who are joining us live right now, you are able to put some answers, some questions in the chat. Sven was already managing the chat during your talk, and I saw all kinds of conversations going on, and people that rely to recognize experiences in their own lives. So
I can see some questions there. So one there, how is the regulation rules in Australia exist specific? I'm not quite sure what that question is asking me. But certainly we have access rules, but they're very basic, and they're mainly around mobility, vision and hearing. That's really all we have. I mean, the thing about universal design is it isn't a thing, it's a thinking process. So it's a verb. I use it as a verb, not as a noun. And that's one of the reasons that I don't use the acronym UD either. We have decided that the name needs to be spelled out fully, because as soon as you say UD, it makes it sound like a thing. And this is a process. So there are guides for universal design. Various government departments have put them out. But if you try to make universal design a standard or a rule, it kind of is the opposite of what you're trying to do, because if you make it a rule, that's the rule that works at that particular point in time. Yeah. And then, but universal design is evolving. And the whole idea is to do the iterations, to get better next time. Do the best you can with what you have at the time, and do better next time. You know, so it's a growing process in itself, and it's a growing process for people who are wanting to practice it.
Yeah. Rapid technological changes. The society is moving really fast. So it's if you make it a law, you are lost. And we have in 1 year we have Article 16.2 versus you know, that's not helpful in the design process, and not we are not experiencing the design freedom if you have all these rules. You need to think about it yourself and to test it with your audience. Yeah. Do you have some another question? What do we have some maybe some practical ideas for designing? You mentioned some about recognition in environments that people can know where they are with signing. You have some more practical ideas that are so obvious that you need to use them every time almost?
Yeah, look, most of it is down to the detail. So the sorts of things I'm thinking about, like I was just rethinking again the hospital long corridor. There wasn't a seat to be had, so no one could sit and rest. The other thing I think that gets forgotten is lighting. And again, this idea of having spotlighting. Well, actually, if you have a corridor with spotlighting, with dark patches in between, that can be very disconcerting for people with vision perception issues, apart from vision loss, and also for people with dementia. That can make it, if it's in stripes, it makes it look like the corridor is just full of steps. Or if the floor is shiny, it can look like they're going to be walking into water.
Yeah.
Especially if and like simple things like black mats at a door can look like a hole in the ground, because people with dementia their perception gets distorted. And same thing in bathrooms. If it's an all-white bathroom with an all-white toilet and all-white fittings, people can't see where the floor ends and the wall begins. So these are all things that I have only learned in being with people with disability and hearing their experiences, and much of it has been involving them in co-design processes. So really, they are the people who actually have the answers. They're not there to critique, this is a problem and that is a problem. They actually know what the solution is as well.
Yeah.
Because what they say to me is that design is so thoughtless, because they can see instantly how to remedy it. So they're there to help. They're not there to sort of just give you lots of headaches.
Yeah, wonderful, great insights. What an insight. Thank you, Jane, from Dominique. Yeah, empathy is perhaps the key word. Yeah, it all has to do with empathy, right? Yeah. You have to feel it. You have to feel it. Yeah.
I think, and if you can't feel it personally, you need to really listen. And you will hear some of the frustration, the anger, and in some cases the pain. And I think it's the most wonderful thing to be able to alleviate those feelings. To see buildings, places and spaces where there's a diversity of people, and being in a wheelchair or pushing a baby stroller or walking with a cane or wearing a hijab isn't going to be seen as abnormal.
Yeah, so make them feel understood. Eh?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we are heading the end, Jane. Lovely. Well, some new. Yeah, thank you, Jane. Great takeaways from today. Yeah, really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, love it.
So our website is like a library of research, of information, articles, and so on. It's in several topics. I've got environment, transportation, tourism, universal design for learning, which is another arm of the whole thing. So,
I'm going to share it, Jane. I'm going to share it because we love to support your message and your vision, and this is such an important topic for universal design. Like I said in introduction, to grow as humanity, to grow as a person, to enjoy life, to live on your own terms, as we call it. So we are going to share all of it with the links on again instituteofinteriorimpact.com/Jane. We will put all the information there so they can connect with you. They know where to find you. They know where to find your your institute. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Great to have you, Jane.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Well,
your
thank you, everyone.
contribution.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thanks again for letting me talk about my favorite subject.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.